Today I'm joined by George Ross, head of the Dubai office at Transfer Connex, the company making waves by helping investors buy property in Dubai with crypto. We're going to break down how it works, clear up some myths, and explore what the future of crypto and real estate looks like in one of the world's fastest growing markets. Let's get into it. George Ross from Transfer Connex, thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. Appreciate it. Let's start by maybe just delving a little bit about you, yourself, how you got into this market and who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on this podcast, Steven. My background really in this industry starts in 2014. At that time, I just left school then, started up my own Bitcoin wallet, had an interest in crypto at that time, very early on. I was actually on a very different career path than I am now. One thing sort of has led to another, and I found the interest more into where my passion lied in like cryptocurrency, fintech, and other currencies and finance as well. And then I made the jump. I soon joined Transfer Connex, and here I am today.
So this is your first job within that sort of field?
In that field, yes.
So 2014, you just left school?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And how do you get to understand what's going on in this market at that early age?
Yeah.
It's a lot of people came through the gaming world. Is that how you did it?
That's it, yeah. So you've sort of hit the nail on the head then back at that age. I don't know if you remember that from our previous conversations, but so I literally see it online on a forum. And it was like it's very interesting to see, but it was like magic internet money of the future. Then I started reading more into it, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, like what these guys are saying, like I sort of somewhat resonate with that. And then I just sort of went for it and got invested and adopted it from an early age.
So who are Transfer Connex then?
Yeah, so Transfer Connex, obviously we started a decade ago, in 2014 as well. We specialize in, all things payments, cross-border payments and foreign currencies. So we help all individuals, businesses, wherever they're doing transactions for their business, if they're purchasing property overseas or, any other type of transaction that falls under that umbrella, really.
So what made you come to Dubai? How come you came here?
3 years ago when I made the move to come here and start up an office, I see that, crypto was a hub at that time. It was just shortly after COVID, and there was a lot of influencers in this, like in that time over here for crypto. And I thought, do you know what? It seems like there is a market there, but there's a market that's not sort of really captured in a sense. So I thought I'd come over just to see how it was. And then one thing had led to another where our business was organically growing over here. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna try and build some business, and here I am today.
So where do you sit within Transfer Connex?
Yeah.
As an employee or a partner? What is yours?
So predominantly, obviously, I originally come into the company as an employee. We are sort of family in a sense. We are like a family-run business, where there's a lot of us are like very close connections. A lot of us are family members, things like that. Then since I moved out here, I took the step up to take more of a senior role, to build and manage this Dubai entity over here.
So do you have a physical presence here in Dubai?
Yes.
Did we go and walk into an office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime.
And where's that? What does that look like?
Currently, our office is in Fountain Views.
Okay.
So in just above the Cinema City, that area there, right attached to the Dubai Mall. So it's quite a good location for many of our end users just to pop in, if they're around by the Dubai Mall.
Very good. And UK, you have offices anywhere else apart from UK and Dubai?
Yeah. So we've got an office in London, right next to the bank. So Poultry Street. I don't know if you're familiar with that area.
I am.
Yeah. So we've had that
by the City of London.
Yeah.
What is your core business exactly?
We specialize in all overseas payments, multi-currency accounts, helping those individuals businesses, with their property transactions, or, if they're importing or exporting overseas. So that's the core business where we was founded upon. And now obviously we have many other channels to come with that. So cryptocurrency is one of the things that is exponentially growing in this market.
Obviously, there's a lot of companies here from the UK and elsewhere who are doing currency transfers, etc., in the traditional sense, i.e. competing with the high street banks, etc.
Yes.
But you do something a little bit different, which is the reason why I know you in the business that we're doing together, is that there are people all over the world who have decided to buy property in Dubai.
Yeah.
Offline property mainly, as far as I'm concerned, but other properties as well. And that's where you come into play. And how do you help those guys who maybe don't have, they're not looking at cash, they have their money in digital currencies?
Yes.
What's the process, and how do you help them?
Yeah. I believe that the way that we help them above others is by the level of expertise. Where our teams are built with experience, and a wealth of understanding of the market. So what we're able to do with the client is to transparently help them and also explain to them the process. But all above that is the way that we help them in sort of a no nonsense term. So it's, we really do give them that ability from A to B in a transaction without all the steps in between. Obviously, we explain to them the steps, but we handle that on behalf. I believe it's probably a bit like yourself as you sell property, is to take that stress away from the client in itself, and so you manage a lot of that aspect for them, and they just think, pay my money and then I receive a property. So
Yes.
that's what we specialize in.
So I've got my digital assets,
Yeah.
and I want to buy a property in Dubai. How can you help me?
Yeah. To start with, obviously the client will then be introduced to us. We liaise with the client, so we'll have to, go through an onboarding stage. That client, once onboarded, we've gone through the necessary AML regulatory screening processes. Then it really is as simple as, off-ramping, so selling their crypto stable coins into the native AED token here, and then being able to either pay that to a developer directly under their own named account, or if they're on a secondary market, then we can help the client, facilitate what they need, wherever that goes to their own bank account, and they're going to facilitate that themselves, or they have a power of attorney, with the rest necessarily documents, we can also help them as well.
So let's go into detail there. So I'm introduced to you as a client. George, I've got some, Bitcoin.
Yes.
And I need to pay this developer some money.
Yes.
What do I do next? What's the exact process that I have to follow now?
Yeah, so the to follow next is completing the application link. Obviously just a very quick online application. And then once that's completed, obviously it's the onboarding phase. So just some short necessary documents that, every person has.
Like what?
Like a passport or Emirates ID. And then like bank statement, and like proof of address, either or between those. Those are the AML that we have to cover. Once that client's onboarded, then obviously they want to sell their Bitcoin. So our regulatory providers can sell that Bitcoin for them, and then make payments, into AED to developer.
How do you pay the developer? Because some developers take Bitcoin, and we'll get onto that later, crypto. But how do you pay that developer? Because they're not accepting crypto.
It does depend on the crypto that they have, due to, crypto in itself, in a nutshell, is quite a vague and broad term. Obviously, if it's a digital asset, so, whether that be Bitcoin, which is an asset, or some other alternative coins that are an asset. However, the most common one is stable coins. So, USDT, USDC. Those are, 95% of clients do have just have the stable coins. So they'll just get in contact with us on board. Then the stable coin, we will, once they're onboarded and approved by the regulators, then that's sold into AED. And then that AED payment is then sent to the developer. So it's it's a very almost just a 3-step process.
Who decides how much that USDT goes into dirhams?
Yeah, so there's a display rate. So you've got an exchange rate. So that exchange rate, or it's just the USDT is the American dollar just on the crypto blockchain.
Okay.
So there's an exchange rate there, and then obviously we just discuss. We let the client know what the exchange rate is, and then obviously it's converted once they agree, they have the approval. They say, yeah, that's a good rate. I'm happy with that. And then obviously we convert that into AED and then payment.
And can they negotiate that rate?
Yeah. So it's all a negotiated rate. Sorry, the rate is negotiated by like volumes. So the more volume that they do, and things like that really.
And is this kind of service available all over the world to people? Are there other companies like you in, I don't know, America or Spain, etc., that are doing exactly what you're doing?
Yes, yeah.
And how does it vary here from those places?
Cost is one situation where the market is like a very, very early market. It's in its infant stages still. Now, in regards to that, so there's a lot of jurisdictions that don't have a total regulation. So that cost, some entities have a very high cost. So they'll charge that onto their clients, their end users. So they have extremely high fees or, hidden fees in the exchange rates, things like that. These are all things to look out for. Also, in other jurisdictions, they can't handle certain coins at all. For example, in Europe, they brought on a MiCA rule, which stipulates that they have to, instead of USDT, they can only purchase USDC. So obviously then clients are not allowed to go through their relevant broker or exchange for USDT.
And just on that, are you regulated in some way?
Yes. So we use regulated liquidity providers. So all the providers that we put the work to are all regulated. So in my opinion, it's a brilliant business model because we don't just have one liquidity provider. We have several. So we can put tender across that panel and then see for our clients, who's given the best rates, the best service and the quickest time.
So how do we know how to trust you, that we should trust you? What is it that you can provide that we know that if I send you cryptocurrency of some sort, that that money is going to turn into AED and it's going to be paid out? How do I know that?
Obviously, when the client is handling through the service, they're not using us. They're using the regulated provider.
Right.
So everything under their infrastructure is what they're using, and they'll know that. They'll know exactly that they're handling with regulated companies.
So why don't I just go directly to the regulated company that you're using?
Because you just won't have direct communication with them.
They don't talk to the public.
Yeah. So I mean, you clients could go, could try and contact them, and then they'll soon quickly find out that they won't onboard them, or they'll say yes, you do, but due to who you are, there's a standard fee of a couple percent, things like that. So obviously by working with entities like us that are pushing large volumes of liquidity through, you have lower costs.
You get a better rate.
Yeah,
I understand. So that's the advantage of going through you, is you're going to get the best rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to work very efficiently, and that money it never touches your hands, this money.
No, never. We're not allowed to.
Right. Yeah. In your journey of 3 years here in Dubai. Is it 3 years?
Yes.
Yeah, 3 years of Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen, the big changes that have happened in those 3 years? Certainly related to property.
Since I've been here, I've seen a massive increase in that business. When I first come over here, I used their traditional business of foreign exchange. And that was, an 80-20 rule on my focus, which was obviously what I know, the background in foreign currencies, and then the desire to grow the crypto side. since then, I would say that has flipped. So 80% crypto, 20%, in normal transactions. So that crypto side, people off ramping their crypto, buying properties with crypto, wanted to diversify their crypto to buy the property. I've seen that grow massively in the last 3 years. Literally a tremendous amount.
And are you seeing peaks and troughs in that business? So there's certain seasonality to when people are doing trades, or is it purely linked to the price of crypto?
Yeah, I think the seasons do play a good part, and yeah, the price does as well. Like the seasons, you can't get away with the summer season. Just naturally, generally speaking, like
It's quieter.
It is quieter. However, we had sort of a good summer as well. So, as you see the price go up, you do start to see like an influx of buyers. Of people buying the property. I mean, so sellers in crypto. But then also, as we come down, as the market sort of comes down and has a correction in crypto, you do then see a lot of people get in contact with you almost in a panic, and they're like, oh, okay, should I sell now?
Right.
Should I buy that property now before it costs me a lot more money?
Are you a company that if I have cash for my property and I want to put it into crypto, is that something you do? Are you able to facilitate that? It's the reverse of what I would normally know you for, which is to turn crypto into money to pay developers. But there's also a time when you're doing the opposite way as well.
Yeah. So we do that in the opposite as well. So anyone that wants to sell their property for crypto, that's what we do. I mean, in the earlier stages of when I was coming here, I was seeing it a lot more than I am now, because obviously those people back then 3 years ago, the price of Bitcoin was considerably lower. So obviously we were seeing a lot more people going from, I'm looking to buy crypto from AED, and then obviously we go through, part of the onboarding is, source of wealth, and then it's, I've sold my property in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we're seeing that less and less, because obviously the market in the crypto market seems to be in, hopefully I say, in a phase of expansion, meaning obviously the crypto market's going to go up even further. So obviously a lot more people are holding on, and then I only think in like the next 8 to 12 months we'll sort of start to see a lot more influx of people selling their crypto to buy real estate, because obviously that being the peak of the current bull run.
Right.
But I could be wrong.
Yes. What types of properties or the size of transactions are most common as what you're doing?
I mean, larger transactions generally are facilitated in crypto, and villas as well. Like a lot of we've helped a lot of villas. That's on secondary, okay. Primary, we see an abundance of primary, because obviously if you look at like the typical mindset of a crypto investor, they're looking, they've got in the market very early on, and they have earned a considerable amount of gains. We're talking, tenfold that they've earned on their investment, even more. If you go into look at some of the other areas of the market, some people are earning like 100 to 1,000-fold on their investments. So obviously that type of investor is very high risk investor. So then they want to, maybe diversify, come into something a bit more tangible, and then they still want that high return on investment, so that they sort of go down the off-plan route, in hope that they get that more over secondary.
The people that are buying or have got crypto, holding crypto, they tend to be much larger purchases. That's not to say that I haven't done some small purchases with people holding, but it does seem that the wealthier guys are using crypto more than your mum and pop and your guys buying $1 million dirham properties, etc. They might hold some crypto, but they're not using it to buy property.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about that, so we're looking at off plan. I know there's been a few developers that have said they can accept crypto, which, as I say, I think it's quite a risky thing because you're transferring essentially cash to their, or crypto, cash, whatever you want to say, into their wallets, which are then unregulated. It's not in an escrow. There's no necessity for them to put it into an escrow.
Yeah.
So that sort of puts the investor at a certain amount of risk. I'm just wondering what other things or other reasons you think that you should not be paying developers from your point of view. Obviously, it's not good for your business, but at the same time, what are those? I mean, I think I know what they are, but I'm just wondering what you have to say about that.
Yeah, no. I do come across it. Some of like the main profile developers are now accepting crypto. Obviously, upon looking into it, as like a competitive landscape, looking into the price, like they do charge a considerable amount of those fees, and they're not transparent with that. It's almost like a take it or leave it.
Yes.
And those investors, like, they just think it's just at their ease, so they just pay it. So that's, one thing is obviously the price, definitely. Other than that, I mean, internally trying to find like their internal policies. So, my advice is if they are going to use that developer, just look into how that's facilitated. Oftentimes they're not. Through some of the big ones, I've heard that it's like very high up, C-suite that's just managing it themselves. They're using a third party, so there is still a third party risk there. So my advice is just literally just look into who that you're using them. Going back to what we said earlier, making sure that you're using relevant regulated parties to facilitate that.
So what you're saying is the developer doesn't actually take the money themselves. They have a company like yourself, maybe sitting at the back, who's actually taking the money.
Yeah. Obviously, not all that can happen, or they're taking it themselves. Now it's just about finding out how they are facilitating that transaction themselves. Whether they are using a third party, or they are just literally, they've got the license themselves, and they're handling it themselves.
So Dubai is obviously very open to this market in terms of crypto market. There are some very large names in the crypto business who are based here in Dubai. They're living here, etc., and they've been very welcome, made very welcome. And I think the governments have taken some major steps in trying to regulate the market to a certain extent, so they're making it easier for companies like yourself to operate, etc. There's still a lot of skepticism. If I go and speak to my uncle or relatives and say, they must be villains, or they must be dodgy people because they're holding crypto, that kind of thing. What do you find about that? The skepticism around crypto. What are some of the common myths or misunderstandings that
common myths? Touching on what you literally just said then. I think it originally derived as a notorious name for crypto. Illicit activities, things like that. One of the myths that I sort of see is that it's very anonymous. You don't know, no one can trace, no one can see your money. Actually, on the flip side of that, it's actually very transparent. So you can literally go through the blockchain and see, who have transferred to who in any given time. So then obviously what a lot of regulated like bodies and companies are doing is they now have AI, AML tools that can scan that chain of wallets within a few seconds to see the source of funds, if they've ever connected to any sanctioned or, any entity that's illicit and not allowed,
What sort of mistakes do you see people making when they try to use crypto for purchasing property here in Dubai?
So some of the problems that I hear in the market are, clients and end users using, companies that are not regulated, trying to constantly beat people on the price. And then obviously that leads them down to, a false representation of a company, and then only what I hear, of the like typical scams that go on.
I think one of the other things I've heard is that there are people overseas who can transfer crypto into cash or cash into crypto, and they're being charged very large commission rates.
Okay.
So sort of not double figures, but certainly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas, and I think if they come here, they can get much lower rates, but maybe some of them are getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Is that what you're hearing? Do you hearing that people are being overcharged for a service that you provide for a lot less? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously that, there are people being overcharged massively. And it all boils back to, the people are not being educated and the company's not being transparent with them.
Right.
So, there are a lot of companies that are quite cheeky in the sense that they have a lot of hidden fees in their systems and things like that. And obviously once they've got the client, then they've got the client, and they kind of I've heard that they force it upon that client. All types of things like that, really.
George.
Yeah.
I've got a client. He's based in France.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some kind of cryptocurrency. I don't know what he's got. Can you please have a word with him, because he wants to buy this property and he needs to transfer money to pay for this property in the next 48 hours.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're going to say to that guy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so straight away I get in contact with the client. I want to find out what cryptocurrency that he has, whether that is, Bitcoin, if that's a stable coin. Also, we want to know what network that client holds that on. So, ERC20, TRC20, or any other one. Then once we find that out, this is all in the onboarding stage. We need to know personal details about him, due to our regulators process. So that is the documents that we need. So passport copy, proof of address, bank statement. Once the account's approved, then what we'll do is we'll look to get him opened on the account. Once he's onboarded, then the liquidity provider will share the obviously the transaction address with them, and then they simply just obviously send over their crypto. It's all converted whilst negotiating an exchange rate. Once that's converted into obviously AED, speaking in Dubai, good common practice is advising to do a test transaction first. So that test, very, very small amount of USDT, a few to 10 USDT is advised as a test transaction. That's just to mitigate any risks that there could be, even, the obvious one being literally human error. Yeah. To mitigate that, to make sure that the client, can actually send those funds across to the liquidity provider. And then once they have received that and they say that they have, then the client proceeds to send their remaining to them.
And how long does that whole process start to finish? You phone them to the developer having their, or at least the transfer being on the way to the developer.
Yeah.
How long does that process take?
Yeah. Well,
and is that a something you can do 7 days a week, or is it 5 day a week? What is it? Banking hours? How do we work?
Yeah. So obviously we're still obviously in the traditional world. We're confined by what we know, which is the TradFi, the traditional finance sector. So that is onboarding, is the main bulk of that. Unfortunately, it can take anywhere from 24 hours to a few days. It's all client dependent. But once that account is open, the exchange and the transfer of multiple currencies and cryptos is extremely fast. You can have it from, in cryptocurrency, you can have crypto from one side of the world to the other in a matter of literally a few seconds. And there is minimal fees for that in comparison to, the banking sector as well.
I presume a lot of your job when you speak to them, you also want to make sure that they're legitimate and they're proper people. And how do you do that? What do you come across where you think, actually, this isn't right?
Yeah.
Because I know that we've had conversations in the past about certain people that have contacted me and I've thought, this isn't right. And then I've contacted you and said, could you have a word with this guy? and then you'll phone me back an hour later and say it's not right.
Yeah.
We can't deal with this now.
Unfortunately, we do have quite a hard job here in Dubai sometimes. Obviously, there's lots of scammers that contact us from overseas trying to take advantage of us. So we do come across, those clients. We do have like sets of criteria that, we're trying to gather information from this client. Obviously, the biggest picture here is the motive of the client, what their reason for transfer, their reason for transaction is. So, in our example, it's real estate. So it's pretty straightforward. Like this, our job's cut out for us, really. The client should be purchasing real estate, and they'll have the relevant documentations to show for that, whether that be contract F, SPA, EOI. Those are the things that we need, really.
Who's your typical client? Can you maybe, or are they all over the place? So, you've got investors, end users, high net worth individuals.
Yeah,
just diversifying their assets. Who is your typical client?
Yeah, I mean, from the top down, I would say that we have all of them. So the ultra high net worths, we've had a few of those, even more evidently in recent months as well. High net worths. We're now starting to see a lot of business owners around the world, especially UK, Europe, their imports that they would purchase from China in American dollars. We're now seeing a massive influx of that changing into USDT.
Why would they be doing that rather than traditional ways?
I mean, generally speaking, so obviously China, they have issues around obviously having money outside of their country. Like the government, imposes restrictions there, $50,000 restrictions a year. I would presume they want USDT, so that it means that they have more free will of their money outside the country. So, they might want to come to Ras Al Khaimah, the Wynn Casino, and spend that there in the next few years, or, something like that, rather than having dollars that they're confined to in their local bank accounts in China. Yeah, so we have all types of clients. The common denominator is that a lot of them are actually early investors into cryptocurrency. Could be anywhere between now and 10, 11, 12 years ago. So a lot of them have made a considerable amount of money and are looking to
Where do you see all this heading the next 3 to 5 years? What's your company plan or your business plan, or what do you see the market in crypto happening over the next few years?
Over the next few years, 3 to 5 to 10 years, I see the crypto market exploding.
Why would that be? Why would the crypto market explode?
Tokenizations. I'm not sure have you heard of tokenizations? So obviously any type of asset or anything is being tokenized on the crypto sector, the blockchain. For example, the real estate. So real estate is currently being tokenized. There is like a more of a modern term now as a sector in real estate called RWA, real world assets. These are all being tokenized. So, or like real estate assets being tokenized on the blockchain, precious metals, almost every type of asset that you can see being tokenized.
Does that mean that people will be buying a small amount of a house or a building, etc.? Is that what you mean by tokenization?
Yeah, potentially. So, that's how I see it anyway. BlackRock.
Yes.
Larry Fink was on CNBC explaining that over the next years to come, him and his team are doubling down on tokenizations of crypto assets, which only means that their ETF share price will go up, and all that money is being flowed into the value of Bitcoin. So obviously that is going to go up. And then if you've got real estate being tokenized and coupled on that blockchain, then I only see that rising as well alongside.
So what you're suggesting is over the next few years, you're going to see a lot more people adopting Bitcoin as almost not a stable coin, but as basically a coin, something that they're actually going to be using.
Yeah.
For a lot more uses. There's going to be a lot more use. Because at the moment, I don't know what you could. I mean, you hear stories about buying a pizza with a Bitcoin all those years ago. But what can you do with Bitcoin today?
Yeah. Well, it's more so like a store of value.
Right.
So you might have heard, like, the term digital gold. A modern era of a new financial asset. The good thing about obviously Bitcoin is, as we know, it's deflationary. I don't know many other assets that are deflationary.
What does that mean to you, deflationary?
There's only 21 million in total of Bitcoin,
right?
And there'll never be any more.
Okay.
So if 21 million people buy up Bitcoin, then who's going to sell their Bitcoin to someone else? So the price obviously is going to rise. Where if we look at the fiat currencies, they're inflationary, so they're all losing their value. So whilst they're losing their value, the value of this asset is going to increase. Somewhat similar to how I see the Dubai real estate market.
So that suggests that if you're holding Bitcoin today, you just don't sell, just keep it, because at some point in the future, you might be able to buy a house with one Bitcoin.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there will be places in the world that you might be able to buy a house already with a Bitcoin. But all I'm saying is that a portion of that Bitcoin could be used to buy a house.
Exactly.
That's what you're talking about, tokenization, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So, in 10 years' time, I only believe that you could buy, a handful of properties with Bitcoin. And also, a more of a direct channel. So, the UAE here, I believe that they probably even would have their own digital version of a cryptocurrency. So where they're going to streamline the process of going from crypto to real estate.
So what you're suggesting is that maybe we'll all be carrying around a UAE coin of some sort.
Yeah,
which is linked to the value of Bitcoin or whatever.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah. So, like a cashless society.
Yes. Yeah.
That's somewhat of that nature.
Interesting. How exciting. I wonder whether there's any space for me as a real estate agent at that point. What do I do then? If it's all done on the blockchain and all done. Well, anyway, I'm sure that people still hopefully need me. But that's exciting for your business, I would imagine. And you're young. You're still young. So in your lifetime, you're going to see all this happening.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe so anyway. I believe, that this is all going to happen. And I'm looking forward to it as well.
And is there any risk in it never happening?
There's always a risk, yeah. There is a risk because there isn't it with like Bitcoin as as the godfather of cryptocurrency. There isn't a medium of exchange for Bitcoin yet. So
what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is in terms of the fiat currencies. For example, a great example of a medium of exchange is the gold standard many years ago for like the US dollar back to the gold. They dropped that. But gold had a medium of exchange. You could either trade your gold directly for dollars through the bank, or if you didn't want it, that was backed to gold. There isn't that for Bitcoin, but if we do come into like a medium of exchange where hopefully the Fed and other central banks around the world, they back their assets to Bitcoin, then hopefully we see that. But yeah, I do think that it's an asset at the end of the day, isn't it? So it's always going to fluctuate. An asset, it's always going to fluctuate in price.
So when we talk about Dubai and the market here for where are we in the world stage when it comes to how we're dealing with crypto and the transfer of digital currencies?
I believe, only from my opinion, and going back to the reason why I decided to come here as a crypto fanatic and invest myself, I believe that we're at the top.
Really?
Yeah, I do believe so. I believe so because I generally believe that we're a hub for crypto. Over the years, I've met so many different types of people investing in crypto, whether that be an influencer, a shrewd investor in crypto, or a business person in crypto. Everyone is from every type of country around the world, and they all tend to flock here. We have conferences like Token 2049 here, things like that. So I do believe that we're at the top.
So you think people from all over the world who are in this business at the moment and understand it a lot better than I do, people like yourself, this is where they're going to end up. Certainly for the medium term, short to medium term at the moment, as far as you're concerned. There's no other country to be in when it comes to crypto.
Yeah, in my opinion, yes.
Yeah,
I do believe so.
Brilliant. George, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to George for joining me and sharing his expertise on what is still a new but fast-moving space here in Dubai real estate. If you've ever wondered whether you can really buy property with crypto, I hope this conversation gave you clarity. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who might find it useful. I'm Steven Leckie. See you next time.